Look at yourself in the mirror. You probably see an independent, conscious organism making its own choices. But what if you were actually just a temporary meat robot? For centuries, we believed biology was a grand design built to preserve the individual, or perhaps the species. But in 1976, a radical concept turned this entirely upside down.
Evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins proposed a mind-bending premise. You are not the master of your genes. Your genes are the masters of you. We are merely survival machines, elaborate, temporary vehicles built by microscopic strands of digital code to ensure their own immortal replication.
To understand why this caused a scientific revolution, we have to look at the ultimate paradox of nature, altruism. Why do animals sacrifice themselves for others? If natural selection is strictly about survival of the fittest individual, then giving a warning call that alerts a predator to your exact location makes absolutely no sense.
Charles Darwin himself admitted that altruistic behaviors, like worker bees dying to defend a hive they can't even reproduce in, could prove fatal to his entire theory. For decades, biologists hand-waved this away. They claimed animals sacrificed themselves for the good of the species. It sounded beautiful, but it was mathematically flawed. In a group of selfless altruists, a single selfish mutant who hoards resources and refuses to sacrifice themselves will always outcompete the others. Their genes will take over. So how could selflessness ever evolve if selfishness always wins? The answer required us to change our perspective entirely, shifting our lens from the creature to the gene. Think of the early primordial soup billions of years ago. Simple chemical compounds floating aimlessly, colliding violently in a chaotic ancient ocean. By pure chemical coincidence, a molecule emerged that possessed a magical new property, the ability to create an exact copy of itself, the replicator.
But copying processes are never completely perfect. Occasionally, a chemical typo would occur, a mutation. Suddenly, different varieties of replicators competed for space. The replicators that survived were the ones that built protective shells around themselves. Over evolutionary time, these primitive shells became increasingly complex. Fast forward 4 billion years. Those protective shells have evolved into trees, insects, birds, and us. We are the ultimate culmination of those protective suits. From the gene's perspective, it doesn't care about your happiness, your career, or your legacy. Its only prime directive is copy me. This completely explains the mystery of altruism through a concept called kin selection. A gene can ensure its survival by protecting copies of itself in other bodies. You share exactly 50% of your genes with your full siblings. If you sacrifice your life to save 3 of them, you are actually saving more copies of your genes than you lose. As the legendary biologist J.B.S. Haldane famously quipped, "I would gladly lay down my life for 2 brothers or 8 cousins." Suddenly, heroism isn't a mystical, spiritual choice. It is a calculated, cold strategy executed by self-replicating molecules working behind the scenes of your consciousness. But what about people who help complete strangers, or cross-species kindness, like a human saving a stranded whale? Dawkins explains this as a beautiful evolutionary misfire. For millions of years, humans lived in tiny, isolated tribes where almost everyone was a relative. Our deeply ingrained biological urge to help those around us was designed for a world where everyone around us shared our blood. The blueprint's stuck. Today, we live in massive global metropolises surrounded by billions of strangers, but our ancient genetic programming can't tell the difference. The urge to care remains. This theory changes how we view conflict, too. Take the natural battleground between a pregnant mother and her unborn child. It looks like total harmony. But beneath the surface, it is a fierce genetic tug-of-war. The fetus's genes want to extract as many nutrients from the mother's body as physically possible. Meanwhile, the mother's genes must ration those resources so she can survive to raise future children. It is a finely tuned evolutionary armistice. But Dawkins didn't stop at biology. In the final chapters of his book, he dropped a bomb that would reshape human culture forever. He realized that genes aren't the only self-replicating entities on Earth. There is a new replicator, one that moves at the speed of light through human minds. He coined a brand new word for this cultural replicator, derived from the Greek word for imitation. He called it a meme. Long before internet jokes, Dawkins defined a meme as any idea, catchphrase, fashion trend, or belief that jumps from brain to brain. Just like genes compete for space inside the ultimate real estate market, human attention. An idea survives not because it is true or because it helps you, but simply because it possesses features that make it incredibly good at spreading. Songs with catchy hooks, religious rituals, terrifying conspiracy theories. They are all cultural parasites, using our minds as biological hosts to survive. This means you are a battleground for 2 separate titans of replication, your biological genes and your cultural memes. They are both pulling the strings. Sometimes they work together. Your genetic drive to find a mate aligns perfectly with the cultural meme of romantic dating apps and expensive dinners.
but often they enter a state of total war. Think of a monk taking a lifetime vow of celibacy for a deep religious or philosophical idea. Genetically, celibacy is an absolute dead end. The monk's genetic line stops completely. But mimetically, that sacrifice elevates the power of the idea. The meme successfully overrode the oldest, most powerful biological programming on Earth. The cultural parasite hijacked the machine and won. This leads us to a terrifying, yet profoundly liberating realization about what it actually means to be a human being on this planet. Every other organism on Earth is completely locked into its genetic script. A wolf cannot choose to become a vegetarian. A bird cannot refuse to migrate. They are hardwired prisoners of their evolutionary history. But humans are different. We are the only species capable of conscious, deliberate rebellion. We can consciously choose to use birth control, frustrating our selfish genes. We can consciously question and reject toxic cultural dogmas, frustrating our selfish memes. As Richard Dawkins wrote in the final soaring line of his masterpiece, we, alone on Earth, can rebel against the tyranny of the selfish replicators. You are not just a meat robot or a passive host. You are the universe waking up to look at itself, hold the reins, and decide its own destiny.